We know that time-lapse videos are going to be great for stopping the scroll on social media, particularly Instagram, but also places like TikTok, and it's really great to implement this into our content strategy every once in a while. This is not something you necessarily need to be doing every day or even every week, but this is going to be great because it's different than the usual content that we're putting out there, and it stops people's scroll. Not a lot of people are doing this, which is why this is a great time to take advantage of it. Now, this can be a little difficult if you're doing it manually, meaning you're putting this all together by hand. It's a time-consuming process. So I actually found an app that works really well for this, that takes the majority of the work out of it. This is not sponsored by them, but it is an app I want you to know about because I think it's really valuable for us to be leveraging this inside of our businesses. So the Lifelapse app is going to be really, really good because you can take your photos right inside of it and then it puts it together for you. And then if you want to edit it later on, you can actually put it into your video editing programs and tweak things from there, which is something that I do. So with this, you are going to go into the system and you're just going to click on that little plus button and it's going to pull up a new project. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn this around so it's facing me so you can see me as we do this. There's a lot of different features and functions inside of this. We're not going to talk about all of them today, but I am going to highlight the important ones for you to know when creating content for your business. Now remember, with time lapse, this means that your photos are going to be changing in a way that looks like it's almost stop motion. So for me, I use it to create a stack of books and I add a new book every time and then it goes back up and down. There's a lot of different things where we can add things into a screen. So if you're doing a flat lay, you're adding in flower petals or leaves or something that's going to come and make a design on it. So there's a lot of things you can do with stop motion, and inside of here, it's really easy. So up at the top, you can actually change it from 4K or not 4K. You've got your photos, you've got your videos, you know the drill with that. Down on the bottom, we actually need to be paying attention because this is where the good stuff comes in. So they've got your exposure and your white balance, which you can lock. They've got a whole bunch of other features. We're going to talk about some of those as well. But you want to make sure when you're doing this that you lock in that exposure and that white balance. Because if you don't, if anything in the room shifts, it's going to shift to take that into consideration as well. Your camera just naturally does that inside of your phone. So you want to make sure that you lock that in so that it doesn't change color or it doesn't change overall lighting. This is going to be really important because it's super noticeable in your video if you don't. So you're going to lock in that exposure, you're going to lock in that white balance, or just hit those lock buttons. You can lock down the rest of this as well. And then you have the ability to set it on a timer so that it's going to go through every couple of seconds and it's going to take photos without you having to do it. Now, I do recommend if you are doing this, that you are either using a remote shutter release. So they've got Bluetooth remote shutter releases that you can just attach to your phone and click it without having to touch your phone. Because remember, if you touch your phone, it bumps your phone, which means it's going to move the things on the screen. And you only want on the screen moving what you manually move. So those flower petals that you're putting in, or the book that you're adding to the stack. You do not necessarily want this to be something that is going to jostle your main image. We don't want to do that. So you may either want to set it on a couple of seconds apart, or you may want to have that remote shutter release for this. So then you can go over and you can, of course, change what you are going to be doing here. And we're just going to slide over. They do have a grid feature, which is really nice. You can either tap on the grid here so it's less grid, or you can tap on more grid so you know exactly where you're moving things. And when you're taking photos, it actually shows you the last photo so you can make sure it is properly lined up, but we'll get to that in just a second. So you can put your grid feature on here, and then of course we've got your focusing, and then of course we've got your crop as well. So you can do this in square format for Instagram, or you can do it in a vertical format for Instagram or the other social platforms as well. Now, I actually recommend, unless you know for certain you're only doing this on Instagram and Facebook, you can shoot it in square, but you might want to shoot it in vertical, keeping in mind it's going to be in that square format at times. But if you film it, if you do it in vertical, then you can crop it later on into square. All right, so let's say we're good with this and we're happy with our settings. The next thing we're going to do is to take our first photo. So here we go. I'm going to take that photo. So we are good. It was on timer there. And you can see how it's got this overlay of what was there. So we know exactly where I was. And maybe all I want to do is line this up and just move my finger a little bit. I could do that as well. So let me just go ahead. And we're just going to line that up and take that photo. Maybe we are, maybe we aren't. Not exactly sure what we've got going on there. Let me turn that off. Try one more time. There we go. We've got our photo and we're good to go with that. So when we're done with that, we are going to go up to the top of our video here. We're just going to click on the little play button. Once we're inside of that play feature, now we have the ability to do a little bit of editing. Now, with stop motion, you actually need to take multiple photos. I recommend no less than 10. You probably want to go to 20 or 30, depending on how you're going to be doing this and what you want the end result to look like. But keep in mind, you're going to be taking a bunch of photos and you're just moving everything a little bit at a time. So if you're adding to a stack of something, you're just going to add one book at a time. If you are adding in leaves around your candle that you've created, you're just going to be moving the leaves just a little bit so that they're kind of dancing around your candle. Keep it very simple and very small movements. We don't want big, drastic jumping movements. That doesn't look realistic for stop motion. So you want to make sure just little steps at a time. Now inside of here, we do have a lot of options. They do give you music, they give you voiceovers that you can do. You can, if you look down at the bottom, you have the ability to adjust things, so you can change your brightness and your contrast and your saturation and your warmth, your coloring. You can color correct it inside of this, which if that works for you, that's great. I typically do it inside of my camera roll, so my phone has better controls than just about any app, and so I am going to export it and then do my color correction after the fact, but you can do it inside of the app as well. You can adjust your speed, so it can go faster or slower when you play it, so you can kind of see how it's faster and slower, and we see how slow it goes. And again, I only took 2 screens, so that really isn't going to help us any, but you can kind of see how it's moving back and forth there. Let me go ahead and stop that for you. You can reposition the sizing, so this is a great time to do this if that's what you want. You can actually export this several times, so if you need to export it in different formats, now's the great time to do that. And so you can kind of change your orientation there. You can set this to Boomerang, which is really cool. So if you toggle on Boomerang, it's just going to go back and forth with that, and you're good to go. Now, of course, you can tilt it. So if when you did this, it was tilted and you don't like it, you have the ability to change that tilt on it. You can also add filters, you can reverse it, and you can rotate it. So if you are taking photos with your phone and you have it positioned so that it's shooting down on the ground, like you probably will in most cases, you may need to rotate it a little bit or tilt it a little bit because it could be at a slight angle. So this is where you can be doing this before you are exporting your video. Now, pro tip here, when you're creating these, you want to make sure your phone is locked down. You are either in some type of tripod or you have it positioned off of a table so that it's not going to move. You want to make sure that it's not going to tilt forward. So if you are using something like a table and it's hanging over a table, I recommend putting something against the edge of the phone so that it doesn't flip when you touch it, or if you go near it, or like if you have some sort of accident, you bump the table or whatever, make sure that that phone is not going anywhere, which again leads back to the remote shutter release or setting the timer here so that you're not manually touching it, because that will definitely move it just slightly enough that people can see things wobbling on your video, and you do not want that to happen. So once you are good with that, then you are going to be able to download it. Up at the top, you've got that download button, and it is going to pull that up, and then you can export it however you need to export that. And those are kind of the main features for this. You want to make sure that you're taking great care as you are creating this, that you're not moving that phone, that you have your exposure and your white balance locked down, and that your phone is not going to move in any way, shape, or form. And remember, smaller steps are better, and the more photos you can take, the more realistic or the more interesting this is going to look. If you're doing big jumps, it's very clearly just photos bouncing back and forth rather than things taking little steps inside of your photo. So remember, we're going for stop motion look, not for big drastic jumps. Take a lot of photos, and the nice thing is, if you're taking a lot of photos and it takes duplicate photos of something, if you don't move it quite far enough, you can actually delete the frames before you export it or before you turn it into your video. So whatever you're doing here, take more, overshoot, and then remove things if needed, because you can always remove things from your video before you turn it into that exported video, but you cannot add things back in. So you're going to make sure you overshoot and then pull back if you need to, because you can't move forward if you didn't shoot it in the first place. If you have questions on how to use this, go ahead and drop that down below for me and show me your examples of time-lapse videos that you're putting out on social. Tag me, send me a DM, send me the link to it. I would love to cheerlead you on with what you're doing inside of your stop motion with your social media content. And make sure you hit that subscribe and notification bell, because I am bringing you more tools and resources that you can use to level up your social media content, as well as breaking news and platform editions on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, on live streaming, and on all the social platforms that you need to create community and conversation within your following and really grow what you're doing on social media. I'm dropping brand new videos every single day to help you level up your content, so make sure you stay tuned for more and drop your questions below, because every single day I'm answering your questions, including doing live streams on Wednesdays. I'll see you there.